Civility is completely out the window.
The problem in American
Watched State
politics
Union earlier. We're
today
gonna watch
is that
this.
there is something that is deeply and fundamentally broken about you as a man, as a person, that is rotting the inside of the country.
Yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Oh boy.
Right?
Stand by my comments. It is absolutely true.
Civility's out the window now.
Did President Trump embarrass the Democrats or embarrass himself? That's the debate
Himself.
breaking
Come
out
on.
among the political elite class after the president's nearly 2-hour, record-breaking State of the Union address. Now, from a rhetorical and performance perspective, I've got to be honest, it was impressive. President Trump had command of the stage and really did seem full of energy, and he stayed on his prepared remarks and on message somewhat, but also adapted to the room and improvised for a few very dramatic.
I mean, yeah, when all the cameras are on you, it's pretty easy to
The
control.
journalist in me feels obligated to point out that this speech was a fact-checker's worst nightmare. For example, Trump claimed that gas prices are now
Who's surprised?
below $2.30 in most states. That's objectively not true. In fact, according to AAA, there's not a single state where the average gas price is below $2.30, and the real average
I don't understand why we are so okay with our government lying to us. I just don't get it. I don't understand at all. Very weird.
nationwide is $2.97. Trump also said that he's brought $18 trillion in investment into the country. Not sure where he got that one, but even his own White House's rosy projections and claims only claim $9 trillion brought in investment, and that's if we take those claims at face value from the White House, which we shouldn't. Trump also said that the man who killed a Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina entered the country through open borders, but he was actually an American citizen. You get the idea. These are just a few examples. But frankly, the fact checkers have had to work overtime after the deluge of falsehoods and incorrect statements in the president's speech. Yes, politicians' speeches are always full of false claims and spin, but Trump really does do a lot more of this than most other politicians, and frankly, I will always find it kind of insulting the way he seems to have normalized just looking us in the eye and insisting to things that are not true. But Trump also pulled something of a political masterclass when he challenged the Democrats and asked them to rise and applaud if they agreed with the statement that the government's job is to protect American citizens, not illegal immigrants. And then somehow they thought this was a good idea. They all sat silently down.
Yeah, this cooked me. A bunch of people fucking came at me about this, being like, oh, how can you support the Democrats when clearly they support illegal immigrants? I'm like, you fucking idiots have cooked us again. I'm definitely not liberal, but I'm barely even Democrat right now, dude. We suck. We suck. God, dude. We suck.
Every legislature to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
And they don't stand. Oh my god. I mean, okay, to be fair, I wouldn't have stood for Trump because I'm not your fucking dog. Like, all these people are pets, all little puppets, but still.
There's
cooked.
your next Republican campaign ad. And frankly, normal Americans are going to see that clip and reach the same conclusion that President Trump did when he said, these people are crazy. As is the case with most State of the Union addresses, the whole thing was basically political theater. And I honestly think we should go back to the pre-1913 tradition where they just sent a letter to Congress and didn't do a whole speech. The night
You think Trump
served
would ever let
to
that happen?
probably change 0 Americans' minds about the trajectory of the country and isn't going to materially affect even a single citizen's conditions. But it did provide fodder for attack ads and get us, once again, all at each other's throats. Other than that, it was really a wonderful evening. That's just my take, and the debate is only just beginning. Joining me now, we've got Conservative Talk Radio.
Come on,
host
Destiny,
Paul
represent us
Hoffman
well.
and Stephen
Come on.
Bennell, a.k.a. Destiny. Guys, thanks for being
Great to
here.
be here. Thanks for having us.
Come on, bro.
Thanks for having us.
So, Stephen, I'll come to you first. I imagine that there's part of that you agreed with, but part of it you probably didn't agree with. Just give me your big picture thoughts on Trump's address. I'm sure you watched it.
It's very difficult to do this, but I mean, looking at where we're at right now politically in the United States, I think one point you brought up, we've just kind of normalized having our government lying to us in the most ridiculous ways possible, even if it's a thing that they are seeing some success on. Like, are we really to believe that 0 illegal people made it into this country over the entire, what was it, these
This is what I mean, is that, like, we have just normalized extremist lies. Like, clearly it's not 0. That's just, like, never a reality. But, like,
said the last 10 months, actually, like 0 people. Just the idea that he can just say whatever, and then the fact that he has these same, rehearsed talking points that he uses over and over again. This country used to be dead, and now it's the hottest place in the world, and blame.
to be fair, the left allowed him to do it. We never fought back on it. We spent too much time bridge building. Honestly, like, they demonize us. We have to at least have an attempt to fight back, and we just kind of sit and take it. Not a good thing.
Biden for the things that he inherited that he doesn't like, and then taking credit for the things that are going well, like the stock market. I don't know. I'm very tired listening to Trump and then listening to the ways that people around him try to defend every lie or crazy thing that he says by saying it's all a joke or it's all ironic until it's not, and then they defend the thing anyway. And yeah, to the larger point, you mentioned something about how, wow, it was crazy that Democrats didn't stand up when Donald Trump said that the government's job should be protecting American citizens. I think I would feel pretty disgusting if I had to stand, or if I watched a Democrat stand up for that when the president, sent ICE to Minnesota, murdered 2 American citizens, and then
True.
shielded those
True.
officers
Let's come
from
back
any
to that.
liability
Very
and
true.
shipped them off somewhere else. I'm just saying, in terms of, like, if that's the government's job to protect American citizens, it doesn't seem like it's playing out very well right now in front of the American people.
Yeah, let's come
Very
back
true.
to that second point, obviously, about the Democrats, and just kind of start with the big picture message from Trump. I certainly agree with you. I find it frustrating how he says so many things that simply are so. But Ari, I saw that you shared some posts, and I think it was a New York Post article or something, calling it maybe the best ever, or a really good State of the Union. Make your case for why you liked what you
I
heard.
always love the State of the Union. I don't care which party's president is giving the State of the Union. I love the theater. Maybe that's because I'm a drama kid, but either way, I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's very entertaining, but you also get to see what the messaging is of the party that's in power or who's in the White House. And I think what this was for the Trump administration was a reset. Hey, remember all that stuff we promised during the campaign? Here's what we delivered on. Here's what we're working on.
Here's what we think we delivered on. Here's what we're going to lie about we delivered on. And here's what we're going to promise but not deliver on.
And here's why you voted for us in the first place. Trying to keep that message going with so many attacks.
Gas is not as low as he said. More illegal immigrants came in than he said. And he just spent like half of it demonizing the left, saying that they're crazy and fucking bringing out a hockey team. Like, congrats, yeah, I'm glad that they won gold medal, but like, you can't just bring out a hockey team and then lie and be like, yeah, it was great. Great speech.
On it.
Like,
sometimes it's hard to have that megaphone. Now, that actually gives some credence to your argument that we should abolish the whole thing, because why do taxpayers need to pay for a giant campaign commercial? I find it fun. I find it entertaining. And it's the one time a year I think C-SPAN is actually fun to watch. I like when you see the different camera angles of who's reacting, but also, I think it also shows how civility is completely out the window. Do you remember a few years ago when Barack Obama was giving the State of the Union address and Senator Joe Wilson stood up and called him a liar? He had to apologize, and there was huge public pressure on him for saying that. And ever since then, it's been going downhill, downhill, downhill.
politics was way different back then.
Yelling at Joe Biden.
Sorry.
Now, last night you had Rashida Tlaib chanting KKK while the U.S. hockey team is in the room and everybody's chanting USA, USA, USA. I mean, we're looking at the both extremes of our political parties on display in the room. And I think, as much as I love the speech, and as much as it seems like 63% of Americans, according to CNN, approved of the speech, I think what we're seeing is, as opposed to uniting, we're seeing our country become more and more divided. And I'm not sure how you really fix that, but I don't think it's divided between Democrats and Republicans.
But Ari, can you, when we're talking about civility or
What?
division, I feel
It's
like
not
we can't
between
really
the
talk
parties.
about that
It's-
without at least acknowledging a large portion of that Donald Trump has spearheaded the decline of.
I don't
Would you
agree that
acknowledge
that's
that?
where it started. I think it started with Barack Obama trying to save his second term and cobbling together this whole different groups of different people and telling them, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, here's who to blame, and attacking everybody under the sun. I think that's where it really started. I think Trump came along and said, well, if this is the game we're going to play, then I'm going to play it, and I'm going to play it better.
He literally
I'm not
got into
saying he's
politics
free
by
of blame
saying
at all. I
Obama
just think
wasn't
he's
born in
better at it.
America.
And when you look at the
Like,
civility,
how
the
is
point I
that?
was about to make was, I think
Like,
last night when you
what?
saw who stood up for what, and you see that the Democrats couldn't stand up for anything, even common sense, what you're seeing is there's a real disconnect between the Democrat Party and the average American. I think really what you saw on display last night was common sense and the far left insanity that has taken over the Democrat Party.
Well, all right. So, Stephen, I'll come to you on this question of the civility and decline. I have a feeling you have a slightly different view.
I'm sorry. Can I just get a refresher on the what was that Obama reference?
Which one are we talking about?
That Obama was telling us to blame all these groups of people. What are we
Back
referring
in
to there?
2012, when Barack Obama was having real trouble after passing Obamacare, what he did was he took a whole bunch of different disaffected groups. Let's not forget, it was Barack Obama who was pushing all the Black Lives Matter narrative heading into right after his reelect. In addition to that, this is stuff that he's been leaning on anytime there was something with race. He doubled down on the wrong side of it, took the wrong side of it every single time. So if you want to talk
Okay, I'm not hearing anything. I'm just trying to. What was
you want to
the
talk
like?
about
What
Michael
did he
Brown, you
say
want to
or
talk
what?
about George Zimmerman, you want to talk about him supporting Black Lives Matter, the organization that also had anti-Semitic undertones. Where do you want to start with that? Because that's what Barack Obama
So in
started.
terms of anti-Semitic undertones, I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump literally sat with Fuentes for I think it was in Mar-a-Lago to have dinner, let alone all of the other insane associations with him. Elon Musk is a white identitarian neo-Nazi machine on X, and he had a prominent role in the White House that was, by the way, a monumentally epic failure. Doge, which was a thing that was promised to us that was over the last year. I noticed that Donald Trump didn't say anything about that. He talked about putting together a new fraud team that was supposed to be headed by J.D. Vance. I don't know why we would have any faith in that when Doge was probably the biggest failure I've ever seen of a government anything initiative in the past 20, 30 years that I've known of. The idea that the president of the United
Cooked.
States, Barack Obama, giving his opinion on some things in what was generally a very reserved way, and to say that that is what started things, and then compare that to Trump, who nicknames derisively every political opponent he has, is just absolute insanity to me. But I mean, it's in line with the
It's always a blame game, bro. I know he's just about to say it, I bet, but it's just blame game. You can't blame Trump, it was Biden. Can't blame Trump, it was Obama. Can't blame Trump, it was Kamala or Hillary. It's always a blame game, dude.
current conservative thought of trying to blame literally anybody but
You're
themselves
telling me,
when the
you're
current
telling me
political
that Joe
environment
Biden, who
is just
funded
absolutely
terrorist
all of them, man.
organizations like funding Iran, gave money back to the Palestinian Authority so they could continue their pay for slay program, and you're going to lecture me about Donald Trump, who's solving peace in the Middle East right now. You're going to call him an anti-Semite, especially when he has Jewish grandkids?
Just
Give me a
curious.
break on
Yeah, sorry, the Middle East isn't my strong point here. How many times are we going to get peace in the Middle East? Because I was told that the Abraham Accords were peace in the Middle East, and then the October 7th attacks happened, and then I was told that we just had
the
peace in the Middle
October
East
7th
again
attack
after the
happened
first
when Joe
Iran bombing,
Biden
or after the Hamas thing, but then
Okay,
we
guys,
bombed
I'm
Iran, and then I
gonna
was told the peace in
reclaim
the
the
Middle
floor
East
here
is
for
there.
a
Now we're
second.
about to go to war with Iran. I'm just curious. When are we going to have the final peace in the Middle East?
And
or
we're
is it always
not,
like
so we're not going to
transient
go
1 or
down.
2 years?
Sorry,
Like,
guys. We're
yeah,
not going to
sorry,
go
my bad.
down the
Destiny's
Middle
fucking
East
fried him.
rabbit hole. I think we could do
Don't protect
a
him.
2-hour podcast on that and only scratch the surface. I also think we're probably not going to solve the great debate over the collapse of American civility.
Don't
But
protect
I
him.
do
Don't protect
wonder.
this
Let's
fucking
talk about this second question,
conservative,
right?
bro.
To me,
Well, just as a quick thing, I'm sorry, because I didn't answer the question. If you look at the 4 years of Biden and you look at the prior 4 years of Trump, or even the first year of Trump here, and you're trying to pretend that there is even remotely the same level of civility shown, you are the problem in American politics today. Like, there is something that is deeply and fundamentally broken about you as a man, as a person, that is rotting the inside of the country. And at some point, we'll grapple with that, or the country will collapse.
Well,
So
thank you for
we'll see what happens
illustrating
in
the
3
point
years,
on
I guess.
civility when you say there's something fundamentally wrong with me. Because
yeah, let's not go there. Let's not go there, right?
Stand by my comments. It is absolutely true. To compare Biden, who said he wanted to be a president for all Americans, who increased the Secret Service allotment to President Trump, or to Trump while he was running for president, as Donald Trump strips Secret Service protections away from people he doesn't like, as he targets law firms he doesn't like, as he gives nicknames to people he doesn't like, who can't even condemn violence across all sides after the Charlie Kirk assassination, but instead says that violence on the
you
left
want to
is
say, you want to talk
disorderly and
about
terrible, but
condemning
violence on the
after
right is in
Charlie
response
Kirk
to that. It's
assassination after the
unbelievable.
Democrats were
But
saying, well, he said some really bad things. I'm sorry he got shot, but he kind of deserved it.
I mean, are we really going to talk about Charlie Kirk right now? I mean, like, Charlie Kirk literally said that the Second Amendment was worth keeping, even though it did mean that kids had to die. He said that. Like, what? Destiny's cooking. I'm not going to lie. Destiny's cooking. We're halfway through, and this dude is fucking fried. He turned more red as this fucking episode's gone further.
After the entire left
Sorry, which Democratic leader
after
said
the
that? Which
entire
Democratic leader
left
said
said
that?
that when
Which
all
Democratic leader said
every
that?
single
Oh, the
week,
entire left. So it should be
every
really easy to name a single
Okay,
Democratic
guys,
leader.
I'm gonna reel
There's
us back in
nothing.
here.
There's
I'm gonna
nothing.
reel us
Okay.
back in here.
He's getting
I
fucking
think we'll
pink.
leave it there for that. I get your point.
Okay.
I
Let
actually,
the record show that he had no response to that, but okay.
I think actually one nice, if I was going to talk about the State of the Union and say one unifying moment, was actually both sides did stand and applaud when Trump condemned political violence and the shooting of Charlie Kirk, and I did appreciate that. Though we can obviously
So he can condemn Charlie Kirk, but can't bring up the Minnesota lawmaker who was murdered by a Republican. And then Donald Trump Jr. makes jokes about Paul Pelosi getting hit with a hammer. Like, yeah, of course they'll condemn it because Charlie Kirk got murked, but like they won't condemn it in other situations. Like,
talk about the broader way that was handled, and it
bruh.
was far from ideal. On this specific point, though, Stephen, I have to say I am very critical of Trump's handling of immigration. I think obviously he's overcorrecting from the Biden policies, which were, their own problem in a lot of ways. But this moment where he says, please clap and stand with me if you agree that we need to put the safety of Americans before illegal immigrants. And then you have the Democrats sitting on their hands silently. I mean, what are they thinking doing that? And how is that not like the perfect wet dream of every Republican political operative for the next 10 million attack ads? I think that's going to land with people.
Because Donald Trump has used this excuse of illegal immigrants to attack American citizens. We've got now hearings
True.
where judges are have issued release orders for American citizens that have been illegally detained by ICE who aren't being released weeks sometimes after. Sometimes they're already shipped out of the country. You have the whole Alex Preddy thing. You've got the Renee Good thing. Regardless of whether or not you think it was a justified or unjustified killing in both those instances, that's federal troops going to, or federal officers going to a state and killing American citizens. The idea that you're going to talk about illegal immigration and how we should protect Americans over illegal immigrants, but you've used that same talking point to what seems to be bring harm to American citizens, it rings hollow. And I wouldn't stand for it either.
And
What? So why can't Ari? I'll come to you in one sec. Ari, yeah, I'll come to you in one sec. But it's like my perspective is that Democrats need to seize the high ground and say we agree we need to protect Americans over illegal immigrants, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and we think Trump's doing the wrong way.
As much as that is true, they don't have a voice to say that during this speech. So until they're able to leave the room and do press conferences and stuff, they are just held at this. Oh, they agree with Trump. Trump cooked, and then that's it. So they can't because like they're not given the same level of influence within that room. So
outline their own vision, but it feels like you're just giving a gift to Trump when you sit on your hands. They got up to applaud for banning congressional stock trading, which I don't care too much about one way or the other. But it's like if you're going to get up and applaud for that, but then not for the basic statement of protect Americans before illegal immigrants, it just feels like an own goal to me, Stephen.
I mean, you can view it that way, but I mean, if you've seen the president utilize that same rhetoric to attack American citizens, I don't know why you would support him when he says it. It just doesn't make any sense to me. We need to do something about protecting American citizens over illegals, and then we've seen how that's played out now in a historically horrendous fashion. Why would you stand by this guy and support him when he says, those empty words?
You're somebody like Washington State Trooper Christopher Gadd, who was killed by an illegal alien who was driving drunk in the middle of the night at 104 miles an hour on a freeway. And because of Laken Riley, and because of all the other Americans who were killed by illegal aliens, and yet the left doesn't want to acknowledge that at all. The left doesn't want to acknowledge that ever happens. Instead, they just want to not stand for protecting.
And another thing is, like, I'm pretty sure all those people are like convicted. All those illegal immigrants, like the Laken Riley murderer was convicted. I think like that drunk driver was convicted. Like all these people are convicted. All these ICE agents who are doing these things aren't held accountable, and that's the Gestapo level threat of being like they can do whatever they want and they won't have any consequence, and that's the problem. Not protecting American citizens or protecting illegal immigrants instead of American citizens. It's protecting American citizens when accountability is on the table, not just when we're trying to get political points. Like,
Americans. It seems like the left has no problem with this whatsoever. And if you don't want to get killed by a federal agent, you shouldn't start attacking federal agents. And the left
who the fuck attacked a federal agent?
And sending them out into the streets.
They disarmed Alex Preddy and shot him.
Here in the Seattle area to go after federal agents or police officers for that matter, because this is nothing new. This is something that's been happening since 2016 out here in Seattle. This is an ongoing problem where the left doesn't like law enforcement, where the left doesn't stand for Americans because they would rather stand for illegal aliens. This is what they are about. And I have never heard anybody on the left talk about any of the people who were killed by illegal aliens. I've never heard them talk about the angel families. It seems like the left's perspective is, well, we want a whole bunch of people coming into this country and we want open borders and we want them to keep voting for us. And we have no problem with the issues that are happening here with the mail-in ballot system, where we have multiple documented, recorded cases of them voting and nobody doing anything about it whatsoever. They said, well, you know what? If we want to keep this to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. I haven't heard any of them talk about that.
How come all these court cases that like Trump had like to try and like switch over the 2020 election all went flat? So like clearly there aren't that many cases, because if there were, then there would have been no return. But
Stephen, I'll let you respond in one sec, but when you say the left, you are casting with a very broad brush there, and you even had some Democratic members of Congress who voted for the Laken-Riley Act. For example, I think John Fetterman voted for it. So, I mean, you surely would acknowledge that not all Democrats are open borders lunatics, no?
I would say that John Fetterman isn't. I'd say you have a hard time naming any others that aren't. Because John Fetterman disagrees with the Republican Party, 80, 90% of the time? But I saw him stand up on some common sense issues last night when nobody else did. I've seen him say, hey guys, we're looking like idiots. John Fetterman acknowledged the fact that, yes, they did give campaign fodder to Republicans for the next cycle and possibly the one after that by not standing up for common.
I do think that they do kind of look dumb not standing up, but I wouldn't have stood up either because of like everything that's really going on. But they are in different positions than I am. Like if I was in the room as me, I wouldn't have stood up. But if I was in their position, I would have, just because of the bridge building. But I just don't see it happening. So
sense things. When you have Rashida Tlaib chanting KKK instead of USA, when the U.S. hockey team comes into the room, in one of the rare bipartisan moments when most people were actually standing, now you've just killed the fact that the left was standing for Team USA. And this kind of shenanigans didn't play well with the paddles during Netanyahu or any other, or with Donald Trump with people wearing white. It doesn't play. It just looks petty to most Americans.
Yeah, Stephen, your thoughts on that?
I don't even, this isn't even like real politics. I don't know what the conservatives are doing. First of all, to his credit, it is really hard for conservatives to imagine Democrats not being lockstep on things, because they are literally part of the Trump Borg mind. So I don't think they can even fathom having a disagreement in party, because Trump will excise that person from the party immediately if he even detects any type of insubordination whatsoever. First off. Second off, nobody loves dead Americans to illegal immigrants more than conservatives. And you can tell this because, and I made this prediction a year and a half ago, and it will come true by the end, there will be no comprehensive legislation done whatsoever to approach or address any of the issues related to the border or illegal immigrants in this country. Donald Trump is doing a big show of force right here for the first year. I called it a year ago. Anybody that was intelligent could have called it. Nothing will happen. Nothing will change. We're going to go to the end of his term. There will be no legislation addressing the backlog of asylum seekers, addressing the shortage of funding or staffing for crucial immigration-related things that would help us cut down on the amount of illegals in this country, because all
there are multiple things I said as well in my debates.
Like to drag out the same two corpses over and over and over again whenever they want to virtue signal on the issue, and then do absolutely nothing about it, which is basically the conservative MO for everything, whether we're talking Doge or no new wars or 90 deals in 90 days or whatever. Every single thing is a lie. Every single thing is a virtue signal. Progress is non-existent on any of these issues. I don't even know how a conservative takes themselves seriously when they're talking about any of these problems whatsoever. You would acknowledge that if we get no legislation or no reform or anything of the immigration system in the next 3 years, because Donald Trump killed the bill, he killed the Langford bill that was actually going to take a good approach to our asylum system and increase the amount of judges available, increase the funding for border security, increase the funding for judges.
He did do that.
Backlog. Yep, and that got shot down explicitly because Trump said he wanted to keep it open as an election issue. Ted Cruz said it himself on the floor. That's not coming. We're not getting any legislation. We're not
let's give Ari a chance to reply.
Bang.
From
fucking deep.
What do you need the legislation for when we've sealed the border without spending any more money? The legislation that Stephen wants is the one that grants
30
asylum to
million.
11 million illegal aliens minimum that came here during the Biden administration. The Democrats have said as much themselves. And I'll say something else is that when the Democrats had control of stuff, I didn't see them passing any rules. The truth is, neither party wants to solve this. And why does neither party want to solve it? The same reason they don't want to solve Social Security, the same reason they don't want to solve Medicaid, because the second you solve it, it's nobody's campaign issue. And I think the problem is that Stephen and I aren't living in two different worlds. Stephen wants the left to use it for their purposes. I may want the right to use it for our purposes. And unfortunately, we don't have anybody who's common sense getting in a room and saying, okay, you want to solve border immigration, then how about something like this? How about we say, all right, if you never committed a crime and you've never been on any form of welfare whatsoever, but you came across the border illegally, maybe we can find a path to citizenship. But anybody who commits a serious felony against this country or who is living off welfare and came to this country just to get the welfare, maybe we don't grant it to you. And maybe we could get in a room and have that discussion. But from what Stephen's saying, it sounds like he has such hatred for anybody who supports Donald Trump or anybody who's a Republican, he never even want to have that conversation with somebody like me.
I think a lot of Republicans would revolt at that idea, though, of amnesty for anyone. So I'm not sure that's even a viable proposition. As what you're describing is my position and has been for 10 years of a middle ground solution. But
This is the position that conservatives will assume as a mask whenever they're confronted with somebody who actually wants to talk about immigration, which conservatives are not prepared to talk about. Because you'll say all of this now, and I'm curious, if I go through your broadcast or your social media feed, am I going to see you expressing extreme disdain for Donald Trump attacking DACA? Because DACA is basically exactly what you're describing. It's a
You
program
might
that
want to listen
monitors
to my
people
show
in the United
more
States
often
that
and
have
hear
no
how
criminal.
often we criticize Donald Trump on my show. In fact, we have an entire segment called When the Right Gets It Wrong. So making assumptions about a show that you've never listened to in writing that you've never read is quite an assumption. All I hear from you is attacks because
It's
I'm
very
conservative,
interesting that you
because
just
I'm
wait,
a
hold on.
Republican.
Let
No,
me
hang
just
on a
clarify.
second.
Yeah, let
All
me just
you're
clarify.
doing,
Wait,
all
no,
you've
hold
been
on, because
doing
you
is
didn't respond to
no,
what
no,
I
no.
asked.
All
Did
you've been
you
doing,
attack
all
Donald
you've been
Trump for
doing,
attacking
all you've
DACA?
been doing is attacking me
He's not going
because
to
I
answer.
support
He's just
Donald Trump.
crying.
All you've been doing
This
is
is Trump
attacking
derangement
me because I'm
syndrome
a
right here.
Republican. You called me a
It's
bored
actual grown
drone
children.
because I
He
support
can't.
Donald Trump. That's what you just said a few minutes
I
ago.
think he's
Didn't you
broken
say
right
I'm
now.
a
all right, guys,
Is there like a reset
guys,
button on the back of his neck or something? Can we?
let's
Okay, wait.
let's
Did you
try to
criticize
keep this
Donald Trump for
professional, please.
attacking DACA?
Why do you?
That's a valid question, Ari. What have you said over Trump being against
I don't
DACA?
support the DACA program, so of course I don't do that.
There it is. Do you see how I accurately called out the filibuster?
Why
You see how
should
I knew? Do you see
why
how
is that a
incepted? You see
problem
how
to
simple the
say,
conservative
wait,
MAGA
somebody
brain
who's
is? You know how
9 months
easy that was to
pregnant,
call? I'm good on
if
that one. What's the next
if
question?
somebody is 9 months pregnant, flies into France, does their kid get to become a citizen?
Uh-huh.
Well, birthright citizenship
I don't
doesn't
know, and I
exist in
don't
other
care.
countries,
I'm not
so
French.
we're not.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Which French laws do you want to copy right now? What else do you
No,
want?
I'm giving an example of a random country. Why is it the United States of America has to do something that no other country does?
Like our freedom of speech? Like our Second Amendment? What else do you want to get rid of in the United States that doesn't match up with European countries? Please let me know.
That's
Give me the list.
one. Okay, that's what the direction you want to go down. You want to talk about DACA? Let's talk about DACA. I don't think that just because you are here in this country with a parent who has no connection to this country whatsoever and you're born into this country, we should necessarily do it. However, that's not a decision for you or me to make. That is something the courts can make. And if Donald Trump will attack it,
That's great.
he can attack
That's a great, and that's great. It's great that you have that opinion, and that's fine. But I wish you would have just said that before, rather than all this blah 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 about. Well, maybe if you've been here and you haven't committed any felonies, and you're not on welfare, because clearly that was all BS. I wish you would start with the position you honestly hold right now.
I don't see how
Now,
those two are
earlier you
mutually
made this
exclusive
complaint that
at
we can't
all.
have a
Bang.
conversation
You don't
about
wanna have a
immigration, and I agree we
conversation.
can't.
Yeah,
But
kinda
then
just shit on him.
people like you wouldn't give your honest
Guys,
opinion
guys,
initially.
The
All
Borg
right.
drone. Right, people like me. I see why civility's out the window now.
Thanks for tuning in for this debate panel. If you want more,
Real quick, I do wanted to
conversations like
see
this that get
how
fiery, but
red
kind of
was
big
he at the
issue.
beginning?
knows?
Oh, he was red the whole time. Never mind. Well. I mean, Destiny kind of cooked. I don't really know very much about, like, DACA, or, like, I don't have much of an opinion on DACA. It's just like, I know it'll never happen. There's no, like, level of bridge building when it comes to immigration because both sides just will never agree. They'll never come together on this. Let's just spade to spade. It'll never happen. But we'll see. I think I think Destiny cooked him. So, see what type of bridge building we get to.